The call came at 7:43 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the coffee maker, waiting for it to finish brewing when my phone rang. The screen said Kern County Medical Center. I answered and a woman's voice asked if I was the wife of Douglas Whitley. I said yes. She told me to come to the hospital immediately. She told me there had been an accident. I do not remember driving there. I do not remember parking. I do not remember walking through those automatic doors or talking to the nurse at the front desk. The next thing I remember clearly is standing in a hallway that smelled like bleach and death, listening to a doctor explain that my husband's truck had gone off the side of a mountain road. He had fallen 200 feet into a ravine. His spine was broken in 3 places. He had severe brain trauma, internal bleeding, collapsed lung. The doctor kept talking, but the words stopped making sense. All I heard was that Douglas might never wake up. And if he did wake up, he would never walk again. I collapsed against the wall. A nurse caught me before I hit the floor. Someone brought me water. Someone else brought me paperwork to sign. I signed everything without reading it, because none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the man lying in that hospital bed with tubes coming out of his body and machines breathing for him. For 3 days I sat in that room holding his hand and praying to a God I had stopped believing in years ago. I begged. I bargained. I promised anything and everything if Douglas would just open his eyes. On the 4th day he did. But the man who looked at me was not my husband. His eyes were empty, confused. He did not recognize me. He did not recognize his own name. The doctors said it was the brain trauma. They said his memory might come back. They said it might not. They said we would have to wait and see. They said a lot of things that all meant the same thing. Our life was over. The man I loved was gone. What remained was a broken body and a shattered mind that might never heal. And through all of it, through every terrible moment of those first weeks, my Stepson Brennan was right there beside me, crying at the hospital, bringing me coffee, telling me how sorry he was, telling me we would get through this together, telling me he loved his father more than anything in the world. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. It was not until 3 months later that I learned the truth. 3 months of watching Douglas struggle to remember my face. 3 months of medical bills piling up until we had to sell the house. 3 months of Brennan slowly taking control of our finances because I was too exhausted and broken to pay attention. I found the notebook in Brennan's room. I was not even looking for it. I was looking for a charger he had borrowed and never returned. But there it was, tucked under his mattress like a teenage diary, pages and pages of his handwriting. Plans, research, a detailed description of exactly how to cut a brake line so it would fail on a steep grade, a calculation of how much money he would inherit if his father died. A backup plan for what to do if Douglas survived but was too brain damaged to manage his own affairs. I cut his brakes. The canyon road will do the rest. Those words, written in my stepson's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before the accident. I sat on his bedroom floor and read that notebook from cover to cover, and something inside me changed. Something soft and forgiving turned to stone. The grief that had been drowning me for 3 months caught fire and became something else entirely. Rage, pure, cold, patient. Brennan had taken everything from me. My husband, my home, my future. He had done it for money and he had gotten away with it. The police had ruled the accident as brake failure due to poor maintenance. Case closed. No investigation. No justice. But I knew the truth now, and I was going to make him pay for every single thing he had stolen from me. Not through lawyers. Not through courts. Not through any system that had already failed us. I was going to destroy him myself. Piece by piece. Until he had nothing left. This is the story of how I did exactly that. My name is Constance Whitley. Most people call me Connie. I was 43 years old when my husband's truck went off that mountain road, and everything I thought I knew about my life turned out to be a lie. I grew up in Modesto, California, in a house where my father ran a small auto repair shop out of our garage. He was a quiet man named Earl Beckford who believed that hard work solved every problem, and that family was the only thing worth fighting for. He taught me everything about cars before I turned 16. How engines worked, how brake systems functioned, how to listen to a vehicle and understand what it was telling you. He used to say that machines are honest. They tell you exactly what is wrong if you know how to pay attention. People, he said, are harder. People hide things. People pretend. My father died of a heart attack when I was 26. I found him in his garage under a Chevy he had been working on. That was the first time death touched my life directly. It would not be the last. I met my first husband Raymond at a church picnic when I was 28. He was a high school math teacher with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. We were married for 5 years before the cancer took him. Pancreatic. Stage 4 by the time they found it. He was gone within 6 months of the diagnosis. I was 34 years old and felt like my life was already over. For 3 years after Raymond died, I barely functioned. I worked a dead-end job at an insurance company. I came home to an empty apartment. I ate frozen dinners and watched television until I fell asleep on the couch. I was not living. I was just existing, waiting for something to change without having the energy to change it myself. Then I met Douglas. It was at a grief support group, held in the basement of a Methodist church in Bakersfield. I had been going for about 2 months, mostly sitting in the back and listening to other people talk about their pain. Douglas was new. His wife Caroline had died in a car accident 8 months earlier, and he was still raw with it. I could see it in the way he held himself. Hunched. Protective. Like he was trying to keep the world from touching him. After the meeting, I noticed him standing by his truck in the parking lot, staring at the engine with a confused look on his face. The truck was a Ford F-150, about 3 years old, and I could hear a faint knocking sound even from 20 feet away. I walked over and told him his timing chain tensioner was probably going bad. He looked at me like I had spoken a foreign language. I explained what it meant and how much it would cost to fix. He asked me how I knew so much about trucks. I told him about my father. 3 days later he called me. He said the mechanic had confirmed exactly what I said. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. I said yes. We were married 14 months later. I was 38. Douglas was 45. It felt like a second chance for both of us. A chance to build something new from the wreckage of what we had lost. But Douglas came with baggage. His son Brennan was 17 when we got married, and from the moment I moved into their house, I could feel his resentment like a physical weight. He never said anything directly. He was too smart for that. But the coldness was always there. In the way he looked through me instead of at me. In the way he left rooms when I entered them. In the way he talked to his father like I was not even present. I tried to understand. His mother had died when he was 12. That kind of loss changes a child in ways that never fully heal. I did not expect him to love me. I just hoped that eventually he might accept me. He never did. If you are new to this channel, take a second to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss what happens next. Also drop a quick comment telling me where you are watching from right now. The problems with Brennan started small and grew larger every year. Looking back now, I can see the pattern so clearly. But at the time, each incident seemed isolated. Each transgression seemed like something a troubled kid might do. Something he would grow out of. Something that could be fixed with enough patience and love. I was wrong. Douglas was wrong. We were both so desperate to believe in redemption that we ignored every warning sign. When he was 18, he got into a fight with a neighbor kid named Marcus Reyes over a borrowed video game that Brennan refused to return. The fight ended with Marcus in the emergency room with a broken collarbone. Douglas paid the family $9,000 to make it go away. He told me Brennan was just going through a rough patch. He said losing his mother had made him angry at the world. He said he would grow out of it. Brennan did not grow out of it. At 19, he was fired from a job at a warehouse for stealing electronics and selling them online. The company had security footage of him walking out with boxes of merchandise. When they confronted him, he threatened to sue them for wrongful termination. Douglas hired a lawyer named Mitchell Crane, who charged $350 an hour to make the charges disappear. It cost us almost $8,000 in legal fees and restitution. At 20, Brennan crashed his car into a parked vehicle at 2 a.m. and drove away without leaving a note. A witness got his license plate. Douglas paid for the repairs and somehow convinced the other driver not to press charges. Another $5,000 gone. At 21, Brennan got a girl pregnant and then convinced her to get an abortion by promising he would pay for it. He never paid. The girl's brother showed up at our house threatening violence. Douglas wrote a check for $2,000 to make him leave. Every single time, Douglas made the problem disappear. Every single time he found an excuse. Brennan was hurting. Brennan was lost. Brennan just needed more time, more patience, more chances. I watched this happen for years. I bit my tongue until it bled. I told myself it was not my place to interfere. Brennan was not my son. Douglas had to handle this his own way. But I saw things Douglas refused to see. I saw the way Brennan looked at his father when Douglas was not paying attention. There was no love in those eyes. No gratitude. Just cold calculation. Like he was measuring something. Waiting for something. I know now what he was waiting for. About a year before the accident, Douglas updated his life insurance policy. He increased the payout from $200,000 to $750,000. He told me it was because he wanted to make sure I would be taken care of if anything happened to him. He made me the primary beneficiary for $500,000, and he made Brennan the secondary beneficiary for $250,000. I did not think much of it at the time. It seemed like a reasonable thing for a man in his early 50s to do. Plan for the future. Protect his family. Douglas was always responsible like that. But Brennan found out about the policy. I do not know how. Maybe he saw the paperwork on Douglas's desk. Maybe he overheard us talking about it. All I know is that something changed after that. Brennan started being nicer to his father. Started asking about his health. Started showing interest in the family finances in ways he never had before. I thought maybe he was finally growing up, finally becoming the son Douglas had always hoped he would be. I was so stupid. 6 months before the accident, Brennan moved back home after failing to make it on his own in Los Angeles. He said he had gone there to pursue music. Or acting. Or social media. The story changed depending on when you asked. What did not change was the result. He came back broke, angry, and full of excuses. Douglas welcomed him with open arms. Gave him his old room back. Gave him money for food and gas. Gave him chance after chance after chance. And Brennan smiled and said thank you and started planning how to kill him. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning in late October. I will never forget that day as long as I live. The weather was perfect. Clear skies. Cool air. The kind of autumn morning that makes you think everything in the world is exactly as it should be. Douglas left for work at his usual time, around 6:30. He kissed me on the forehead before he walked out the door. The same kiss he gave me every single morning. The same kiss I would never feel again. I told him to drive safe. He laughed and said he always did. Those were the last real words we ever spoke to each other. He worked as a project manager for a construction company that did commercial builds all over Kern County. His commute took him through the Tehachapi Mountains on a winding road that climbed 3,000 feet in about 20 miles. He had driven that road every workday for almost 9 years. He knew every curve, every steep grade, every spot where you had to be careful. None of that mattered when your brakes stopped working. The California Highway Patrol told me later that his truck had gone off the road at a spot called Dead Man's Curve. The brakes had failed completely. No skid marks. No sign that he had tried to slow down. Just a broken guardrail and a 200-foot drop into a rocky ravine. A trucker saw the broken guardrail and called it in. Search and rescue found Douglas 4 hours later. He was still alive, but barely. The paramedics said it was a miracle he had survived at all. Some miracle. The first 3 months after the accident were a blur of hospitals and surgeries and medical bills that kept piling up no matter how many I paid. Douglas was in a coma for 11 days. When he finally woke up, he did not know who I was. He did not know who he was. The brain trauma had stolen his memory, his personality, everything that made him the man I had fallen in love with. The doctors said he might recover. They said the brain was unpredictable. They said we had to be patient. I tried to be patient. I sat by his bed for hours every day, talking to him, showing him photographs, playing his favorite music. Sometimes I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Most of the time there was nothing. Just emptiness. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. Hospital, surgery, physical therapy, home care equipment. The insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. Within 2 months we had burned through our savings. By the 3rd month, I had to sell the house. And through all of it, Brennan was right there. Helpful, supportive, concerned. He handled the paperwork I was too exhausted to deal with. He talked to the insurance companies. He found us a small apartment we could afford. He took over managing what was left of our finances, because I could barely get out of bed most days. I thought he was finally stepping up, finally becoming the man his father had always believed he could be. Then I found the notebook. It was a Thursday afternoon, about 3 months after the accident. I was in Brennan's room looking for a phone charger he had borrowed from me weeks ago. His room was a mess, clothes everywhere, empty food containers on every surface. I checked his desk drawers. Nothing. I checked his closet. Nothing. Then I lifted the corner of his mattress, thinking maybe it had fallen under there. The notebook was small. Black cover. The kind you can buy at any drugstore for a couple dollars. I almost did not open it. I almost just kept looking for the charger. But something made me flip it open. Call it instinct. Call it fate. Call it the ghost of my father telling me to pay attention. The first page was a list of numbers. Dollar amounts. The life insurance payout broken down by beneficiary. $500,000 for me. $250,000 for Brennan. And then, underneath that, another calculation. What Brennan would get if I died too. $750,000 total. Underlined 3 times. My hand started shaking. I turned the page. Research on brake line failures. How long it takes for fluid to leak out. What kind of cut is hard to detect. Which tools to use. How to make it look like normal wear and tear. I turned another page. Douglas's daily schedule. What time he left for work. What route he took. The exact location of Dead Man's Curve. A note about how the guardrail at that spot was old and weak. I turned another page. A diary entry dated 2 weeks before the accident. Brennan's handwriting. His words. I cut his brakes today. Did it while he was asleep. Used the tool I bought last month. Made the cut small enough that it will hold for regular driving, but fail under pressure. The canyon road will do the rest. By this time next week, I will be rich. I sat on the floor of that room for almost an hour. I read every page of that notebook, every sick, calculated detail of how my Stepson had planned to murder his father. And I understood something that changed me forever. This was not an accident. This was not fate. This was not bad luck. This was Brennan. Brennan had done this. Brennan had destroyed my husband. Destroyed our life. Destroyed everything. And he had gotten away with it. The police had ruled the crash as brake failure due to poor maintenance. Case closed. No investigation. No one even questioned it. Douglas had driven that mountain road for years. Brake failure on a steep grade was not unusual. Tragic, but not suspicious. Brennan had planned it perfectly. And now he was living under my roof, managing my money, pretending to be the devoted son, while my husband sat in a wheelchair staring at walls, unable to remember his own name. Something inside me died in that moment. The part of me that believed in forgiveness. The part that trusted in justice. The part that thought good things happened to good people, and bad people eventually got what they deserved. That part of me died, and something else was born. Something cold. Something patient. Something that would not rest until Brennan had lost everything the way I had lost everything. I put the notebook back exactly where I found it. I walked out of his room. I made dinner that night and smiled at him across the table. I thanked him for helping with the bills. I told him I did not know what I would do without him. And I started planning his destruction. The next few weeks were the hardest performance of my life. I deserved an Oscar for what I did in those weeks. Every smile was a lie. Every kind word was poison wrapped in honey. Every moment I spent pretending to be grateful for Brennan's help was another piece of my soul I had to carve away. Every morning I woke up and saw Brennan's face and had to pretend I did not know what he had done. Every meal we shared, every conversation we had, every moment I spent in his presence was an exercise in self-control that took everything I had. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until the truth came pouring out. I wanted to hurt him the way he had hurt Douglas. The way he had hurt me. The way he had destroyed everything we had built together. But I did not do any of those things. Because rage without a plan is just noise. And I did not want noise. I wanted results. I wanted revenge so complete, so devastating, that Brennan would spend the rest of his miserable life wishing he had never been born. I spent hours thinking about my options. Long sleepless nights staring at the ceiling while Brennan snored in the next room. Going to the police seemed pointless. The case was closed. The notebook would be evidence, but Brennan could claim I had planted it. It would be my word against his, and he was the grieving son while I was just the stepmother. The woman who had married his father for money. That is how he would spin it. I was sure of it. He was smart enough, manipulative enough. He had already convinced everyone he was innocent. He would do it again. Hiring a lawyer seemed equally useless. Civil court might get me some kind of judgment, but Brennan had no money. You cannot squeeze blood from a stone. And even if I won, he would appeal. It would take years, decades maybe. I did not have decades. I barely had months before the medical bills finished destroying us. No. The system had failed. Justice had failed. If I wanted Brennan to pay, I would have to collect the debt myself. But how? I was a 44-year-old woman with no money, no power, and no connections. Brennan was young and smart, and had already proven he could plan a murder and get away with it. What could I possibly do to someone like that? The answer came to me one night, while I was sitting with Douglas in his room at the care facility. He was asleep, breathing slowly, his face peaceful in a way it never was when he was awake. I was holding his hand and thinking about everything we had lost, when I remembered something my father told me once. He said the strongest structures fall when you remove the right support. You do not have to destroy the whole building. You just have to find the one beam that holds everything up and take it away. Then gravity does the rest. Brennan's life was built on supports. His money came from controlling our finances. His reputation came from playing the devoted son. His safety came from no one knowing what he had really done. His future came from believing he had gotten away with murder. I did not have to destroy all of those things at once. I just had to remove them one at a time. Carefully, patiently. Until his whole world collapsed on top of him. I started that night. I started by making a list of everything Brennan cared about. Everything he needed. Everything he thought was safe. And then I started figuring out how to take it all away. The first thing I did was take back control of the money. Brennan had been managing our finances for 3 months. He paid the bills. He handled the insurance claims. He controlled the bank accounts. I had let him do it because I was too broken to care. But now I cared. Now I paid very close attention. I started by requesting copies of all our bank statements. I told Brennan I needed them for tax purposes. He did not suspect anything. Why would he? I was just the exhausted widow going through the motions. The statements told an interesting story. Over the past 3 months, Brennan had been slowly siphoning money out of our accounts. A few hundred here. 1,000 there. Nothing obvious enough to trigger an alert. But it added up. Almost $18,000 had disappeared into accounts I did not recognize. He was stealing from us. On top of everything else, he was stealing from the man he had crippled and the woman he had destroyed. I did not confront him. Instead, I quietly opened a new bank account at a different bank. I arranged for what was left of Douglas's disability payments to be deposited there instead. I changed the passwords on all our online accounts. And I started keeping meticulous records of every dollar Brennan had taken. The second thing I did was learn everything about his life outside our apartment. Brennan thought he was careful. He thought no one was paying attention to his comings and goings. But I was paying attention now. I noted when he left and when he came back. I listened to his phone conversations through the thin walls of our apartment. I checked his room when he was gone, careful to leave everything exactly as I found it. I learned that he had a girlfriend named Destiny Harlow, who worked at a nail salon across town. He had been seeing her for about 4 months and had told her he was a music producer with connections in Los Angeles. He had borrowed almost $6,000 from her to invest in a recording studio that did not exist. I learned that he was part of an illegal sports betting operation run by a man named Vincent Morello. Brennan owed Vincent almost $15,000 from bad bets he had placed over the past year. Vincent was not the forgiving type. His people had been calling Brennan almost daily, leaving messages that grew more threatening each time. I learned that Brennan had a small group of friends who thought he was going to inherit a fortune when his father died. He had been telling them for months that the old man was on his last legs. Any day now, he said. Any day now he would be rich. Every piece of information was a weapon. Every secret was a blade I could use when the time was right. I collected them all and I waited. The third thing I did was make copies of the notebook. I photographed every page. I stored the photos in 3 different places. A flash drive I hid in my car. A cloud storage account with a password only I knew. And a sealed envelope I mailed to Douglas's father Walter in Porterville with instructions not to open it unless something happened to me. The notebook was my insurance. My proof. My nuclear option. I hoped I would never have to use it publicly. What I had planned was better. More personal. More devastating. Brennan had destroyed my life with patience and planning. I was going to return the favor. My first real move was against Destiny. I created a fake email account and sent her a message. I said I was a woman Brennan had been seeing on the side. I said I felt guilty and thought she deserved to know the truth. I said Brennan had told me he was single. I said I had recently discovered he had a girlfriend and wanted to warn her about the kind of man he really was. I included details only someone close to Brennan would know. The scar on his left shoulder from a dirt bike accident when he was 15. The tattoo on his ankle that he always kept hidden. The way he always ordered his steaks medium rare. Then I waited. 3 days later, Brennan came home in a rage. I could hear him on the phone with Destiny, shouting that he had never cheated on her. That someone was trying to destroy their relationship. That she had to believe him. She did not believe him. I heard him punch the wall in his room. I heard him break something. The next morning he asked me if I knew anything about a woman contacting Destiny. I looked him straight in the eyes and said I had no idea what he was talking about. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he shrugged and walked away. He never suspected me. Why would he? I was just the broken stepmother. Harmless. Invisible. Not even worth considering. My second move was more dangerous. Vincent Morello operated out of a bar called the Rusty Nail on the south side of Bakersfield. I went there on a Wednesday afternoon when the place was mostly empty. I found Vincent in a back booth, going over paperwork with 2 large men who looked like they had never smiled in their lives. I told him my name was Connie and that I had information about Brennan Whitley. I told him Brennan had been telling people he was about to come into a lot of money. I told him Brennan was planning to skip town before paying his debts. I told him I thought Vincent deserved to know. Vincent asked me why I was telling him this. I said Brennan had wronged me and I wanted to see him suffer. Vincent smiled at that. He said he appreciated honest motivations. He said he would look into it. 2 weeks later, Brennan came home with a black eye and a split lip. He said he had been mugged. He said they took his wallet and his phone. He said he was thinking about moving to a different city, where it was safer. I made sympathetic noises and brought him an ice pack. Inside, I was smiling. The pressure was building. His girlfriend was gone. His creditors were circling. His comfortable life was starting to crack, but I was not finished. Not even close. The next phase required patience and perfect timing. I had been keeping detailed records of every dollar Brennan had stolen from our accounts. $18,000 over 3 months. I had screenshots of the transfers. I had bank statements showing the money leaving our account and entering accounts that belonged to him. I took all of this information to a lawyer named Carolyn Vance who specialized in elder abuse and financial exploitation cases. I explained that my husband was incapacitated and that his son had been stealing from us while pretending to help manage our finances. I showed her the evidence. She agreed to take the case on contingency. The lawsuit was filed on a Tuesday morning. Brennan was served at our apartment that afternoon. I was sitting in the living room when the process server knocked on the door. I watched Brennan's face as he read the papers. Watched the color drain from his skin. Watched his hands start to shake. He looked at me and asked if I knew about this. I said of course I did. I said I was the one who filed it. For the first time since I had known him, Brennan looked scared. Actually scared. He asked me why I was doing this. I told him I was doing it because he was a thief. I told him I had records of every dollar he had taken. I told him if he did not pay back every cent, I would make sure he spent the next 10 years being garnished. He tried to argue. He said he had only borrowed the money. He said he was going to pay it back. He said I was overreacting. I let him talk. Then I told him to get out of my apartment. I told him he had 24 hours to find somewhere else to live. I told him if he was not gone by tomorrow night, I would call the police and show them the evidence of his theft. He left that night, packed a bag and drove away without saying a word. I changed the locks the next morning. But the lawsuit was just the beginning. The real damage was still to come. I waited 2 weeks. Let Brennan think the worst was over. Let him settle into whatever hole he had found to hide in. Let him relax. Then I made my final move. Brennan had told his friends he was going to inherit a fortune when his father died. He had built his whole social circle around that lie. The promise of future money. The image of a wealthy heir just waiting for his payday. He had borrowed money from people based on that promise. He had made plans based on that promise. His entire identity was built on the foundation of being Douglas Whitley's son and future heir. I decided to show them who he really was. I decided to burn that foundation to the ground and let everyone watch him fall. I created a simple website, nothing fancy. Just a plain page with a clear headline, The Truth About Brennan Whitley. On that page, I posted photographs of the notebook. Every page, every calculation, every detail of how he had planned to murder his father. The handwriting was clearly his. The dates were damning. The cold calculations of insurance payouts were impossible to explain away. I posted the bank statements showing how he had stolen from us while pretending to help. $18,000. Transaction by transaction. A detailed accounting of his betrayal. I posted screenshots of his text conversations with Vincent Morello's people, begging for more time to pay his debts. Messages where he promised money was coming soon. Messages where he lied about having rich parents who would bail him out. Messages that showed exactly the kind of pathetic, desperate con artist he really was. I posted everything. Every ugly truth, every damning detail, every piece of evidence I had spent months carefully collecting. I did not put my name on the site. I did not need to. The evidence spoke for itself. The truth needed no author. Then I sent the link to everyone Brennan knew. Every contact I had found in his old phone that he had left behind when I kicked him out. Every friend. Every acquaintance. Every person he had ever tried to impress with his stories of future wealth. Every girl he had ever dated. Every guy he had ever borrowed money from. I also sent it to Destiny Harlow, and to Vincent Morello, and to the company that had fired him for stealing years ago, and to the local newspaper's tip line, and to 3 different television stations, and to the human resources departments of every job he had ever applied to. I wanted the whole world to know who Brennan Whitley really was. The response was immediate and devastating. Within 24 hours, the website had been viewed over 10,000 times. People shared it on social media. They sent it to their friends. They commented and discussed and debated. Brennan's name became trending in Bakersfield. Everyone was talking about the son who had tried to murder his father for insurance money. Within 48 hours, Brennan's face was on the local news. The story was everywhere. Son accused of sabotaging father's brakes for insurance money. Evidence surfaces suggesting attempted murder. Police reopen investigation into crash that left local man permanently disabled. The reporters camped outside the apartment where Brennan had been staying. They called his phone constantly. They interviewed his former friends, who all claimed they had always known something was wrong with him. Suddenly everyone had a story about how Brennan had seemed off. How he had talked about money too much. How he had never seemed to care about anyone but himself. The police came to talk to me. Detective Morrison from the Kern County Sheriff's Department. A tired-looking woman in her 50s who said she had been on the force for almost 30 years. I showed her the original notebook. I told her where I had found it. I gave her copies of everything I had. This time, they did not dismiss it. This time, they listened. This time, they believed me. Brennan tried to run. He made it as far as Nevada before the highway patrol pulled him over. He was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and brought back to Kern County in handcuffs. But the criminal charges were almost beside the point. By the time Brennan was arrested, his life was already destroyed. His friends had abandoned him. Every single one. The people he had bragged to for years about his future inheritance now knew he had tried to murder his own father to get it. No one wanted anything to do with him. Vincent Morello's people found him before the police did. They did not kill him, but they made sure he would remember them every time he looked in a mirror. His nose would never be straight again. Neither would 3 of his fingers. Destiny gave an interview to a local television station. She talked about how Brennan had lied to her, stolen from her, used her. She cried on camera and said she felt like such a fool. The interview went viral. Brennan's face became synonymous with betrayal and manipulation. And when the case finally went to trial 18 months later, the jury found him guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. The evidence was overwhelming. The notebook, the bank records, the testimonies of everyone he had lied to, his own words condemning him over and over again. The prosecutor called me as a witness. I sat in that chair and told the jury everything. How I had found the notebook. How I had realized what Brennan had done. How I had spent months gathering evidence because I knew no one would believe me without proof. How I had watched my husband's mind slip away while his would-be killer ate dinner across the table from me and smiled. Brennan's defense attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive stepmother who had fabricated evidence. But the notebook was in Brennan's handwriting. The bank transfers came from his accounts. The text messages were on his phone. There was no explaining it away. No spinning it. No escape. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back with a guilty verdict, Brennan did not react. He just sat there staring at the table, like he still could not believe this was happening to him. Like he still thought he was smarter than everyone. Like he still thought he would find a way out. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life. 25 years minimum before he would even be eligible for parole. By the time he got out, if he ever got out, he would be almost 50 years old. His youth would be gone. His dreams would be ashes. Everything he thought he deserved would have slipped through his fingers like sand. I was in the courtroom when they led him away. He looked at me as the bailiffs put him in handcuffs. His face was gaunt. His eyes were hollow. He looked like a man who had lost everything and still could not understand how it had happened. I held his gaze. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just let him see me. Let him understand that I was the one who had done this. That the harmless stepmother he had dismissed and ignored for years was the one who had torn his world apart. Then they took him away and I never saw him again. The months after the trial were quiet. Quiet in a way I had forgotten was possible. Douglas never recovered. The brain damage was too severe. He lived for another 3 years in a care facility, never recognizing me, never speaking more than a few words at a time. I visited him every week. I held his hand and told him about my day. I do not know if he understood anything I said. I like to think some part of him knew I was there. He died on a Sunday morning in April, peacefully, the nurses said. In his sleep, I arranged a small funeral. Just me and Walter and a few people from the grief support group, where Douglas and I had met so many years ago. We buried him next to his first wife Caroline. It seemed right. They had loved each other once. They could keep each other company now. Walter passed away about a year after Douglas. Heart failure. He was 82 years old and had lived a good life. He left me his ranch in Porterville. I sold it and used the money to pay off the last of the medical bills. For the first time in years, I was debt-free. I moved to a small town on the Central Coast. A place called Cambria, about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. I bought a tiny cottage near the ocean and got a job at a local hardware store. The owner was an old man named Gerald, who reminded me of my father. He let me work on cars in the back when business was slow. I started a garden. Tomatoes and peppers, like I used to grow with Douglas. I adopted a cat from the local shelter, a gray tabby named Smoke who liked to sleep on my feet at night. I made a few friends, joined a book club, started taking walks on the beach every evening. I was not happy exactly. I do not think I will ever be truly happy again. Too much has been taken from me. Too much has been lost. But I was something close to peaceful. Something close to okay. Brennan sent me a letter from prison about 2 years after his conviction. I do not know how he got my address. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope and almost threw it away without opening it. But I opened it. I needed to know what he had to say. The letter was 3 pages long. He said he was sorry. He said he had been sick, mentally ill, not thinking clearly. He said he understood now that what he did was wrong. He asked me to forgive him. He asked me to write back. I read the letter twice. Then I burned it in my fireplace and watched the ashes float up the chimney. Some things cannot be forgiven. Some damage goes too deep. The only thing you can do is survive it and try to build something new from the wreckage. That is what I did. That is what I am still doing. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If I feel guilty for destroying Brennan's life, instead of just letting the system handle it. I tell them the truth. I tell them no. The system had already failed. The police had closed the case. The insurance company had paid out. Brennan was going to get away with crippling his own father. And there was nothing anyone was going to do about it. If I had not acted, he would have walked free. He would have collected his inheritance eventually. He would have lived a comfortable life, built on the broken body of the man who had given him everything. I could not let that happen. I would not let that happen. Was what I did legal? Not all of it. Contacting Vincent Morello was probably some kind of crime. Creating that website might have been defamation if anything on it had been false. But nothing on it was false. Every word was true. Every photograph was real. Every piece of evidence was something Brennan himself had created. I did not destroy his life. He destroyed his own life. I just made sure everyone could see the wreckage. My father used to say that machines are honest. They tell you exactly what is wrong if you know how to pay attention. People are harder, he said. People hide things. People pretend. Brennan pretended for years. Pretended to be a loving son. Pretended to be a helpful stepson. Pretended to be something he was not. And for years everyone believed him. Douglas believed him. The police believed him. The whole world believed him. I was the only one who saw the truth. And I was the only one who made him face it. There is a photograph on my mantle now. Douglas and me on our wedding day. Both of us smiling. Both of us hopeful. Both of us believing we had found something worth keeping. I look at that photograph every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to sleep. I remember the man he was before Brennan took him from me. I remember his laugh, his kindness. The way he kissed me on the forehead every single day. I remember everything. And I know that whatever I had to do to avenge him, it was worth it. Every moment of deception. Every careful plan. Every piece of evidence I gathered and deployed like weapons in a war only I knew I was fighting. He tried to take everything from me. In the end, I took everything from him. That is not something I will ever regret. If this story meant something to you, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And remember that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us are the ones we need to protect ourselves from. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the end. I will see you in the next one.